Hi, I'm Patrick. It's great to see you here today for our daily news lesson. This is July 27th. My method of learning English will help you become fluent in about 15 minutes a day. I developed this method while studying for a graduate certificate at Harvard University, which you can see here. Please subscribe now and start learning the right way. Before we start listening and reading, let's review today's news headlines. Number 1. Paris kicked off its first Summer Olympics in a century with a spectacular launch. Number 2. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris struck a tougher tone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday. Number 3. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro faces an opposition candidate in Sunday's election. Number 4. Russia, peace talks, and the U.S. election are among topics covered by a top advisor to Ukraine's president in an interview. And number 5, schools in Haiti's capital and beyond are crumbling as gang violence deepens. Okay, let's get started and good luck.
Paris has kicked off its first Summer Olympics in a century with a rain-soaked, rule-breaking opening ceremony. Widespread travel disruptions triggered by what French officials said were coordinated arson attacks on high-speed rail lines, and rains in Paris had dampened the mood ahead of the ceremony's start on Friday evening. But as global audiences tuned in, the show's spectacular launch immediately lifted spirits. There were fireworks of French blue, white, and red, and crowds crammed along the River Seine and watching from balconies oohed and awed as Olympic teams began parading in boats along the waterway. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris struck a tougher tone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during their meeting on Thursday. Ryan Cheng from Reuters reports.
The first phase of the deal would bring about a full ceasefire, including a withdrawal of the Israeli military from population centers in Gaza. In the second phase, the Israeli military would withdraw from Gaza entirely, and it would lead to a permanent end to the hostilities. It is time for this war to end.
It was part of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington, D.C. He'd earlier addressed lawmakers in Congress and met with the U.S. president. A ceasefire has been the subject of negotiations for months. U.S. officials believe the parties are closer than ever before to a deal for a 6-week ceasefire in exchange for Hamas releasing some hostages.
Ryan Cheng from Reuters. Donald Trump on Friday also met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at his Florida estate for their first face-to-face meeting in nearly 4 years. The two men are seeking to mend an important political alliance that had broken down after Netanyahu congratulated Joe Biden on his 2020 presidential victory over Trump. Friday's meeting could help sharpen efforts by Trump's fellow Republicans to portray themselves as the party most loyal to Israel. For pictures, video stories, and more, follow The Voice of America on X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And for additional stories, visit voanews.com. This is VOA News. Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro faces opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez in Sunday's election. Reuters correspondent Alex Cohen reports.
Maduro has loosened currency controls and curbed once sky-high inflation. But the economy remains stymied by a fall in oil income and enduring sanctions. Gonzalez has appealed to Venezuelan voters' emotions, telling supporters that a change in government could motivate some of the more than 7.7 million migrants who have left the country to return. Gonzalez said Thursday he trusts the country's military will respect the will of the people. But other members of the opposition and some independent observers have questioned whether the vote will be fair. Maduro has said the country has the world's most transparent electoral system. The United States and others have dismissed the 2018 re-election of Maduro as a sham.
Alex Cohen from Reuters. Italy is planning to send an ambassador back to Syria after a decade-long absence in a diplomatic move that could spark divisions among European Union allies. Speaking in front of relevant parliamentary committees on Thursday, Italy's foreign minister announced Rome's intention to reestablish diplomatic ties with Damascus. He says that's to prevent Russia from monopolizing diplomatic efforts in Syria. Moscow is considered a key supporter of Syrian President Bashar Assad, who has remained in power despite widespread Western isolation and civilian casualties since the start of Syria's civil war in 2011. Russia, peace talks, and the U.S. election are among topics covered by a top advisor to Ukraine's president in an Associated Press interview. AP correspondent Jennifer King has more.
Signing an agreement with Russia to stop the war with Ukraine would amount to signing a deal with the devil. That's the position of Mikhailo Podolyak, a top advisor to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In an Associated Press interview in Kyiv, Podolyak said a deal would only buy time for Vladimir Putin to strengthen his position. He says he wants political elites to realize that a deal where Russia does not lose or bear responsibility for mass crime is like signing a ticket for the continuation of the war on a wider scale. Asked about U.S. politics, the Ukrainian says he does not expect changes in relation to Ukraine, but wishes certain decisions would be sped up. Podolyak says Kamala Harris reacts hard enough to today's challenges and that Donald Trump is seen as a nonconformist. I'm Jennifer King.
Schools in Haiti's capital and beyond are crumbling as gang violence deepens poverty and disrupts basic government services as the state education system faces a $23 million deficit. The executive director of UN fund Education Cannot Wait, Yasmin Sharif, says the country needs help. On Friday, she announced a $2.5 million grant that is expected to help nearly 75,000 children via cash transfers, school feeding programs, and other initiatives. Sharif pleaded with the European Union and countries including France and the U.S. to help close the educational deficit.
Thank you for watching. Can you do me a favor? Please leave a comment in the comment section below. That would really help. Thank you, and see you again soon.